Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where I break down the lessons we can learn as GMs and as players from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 58, A Cycle of Vengeance. Just a reminder, if you're not currently subscribed, make sure to hit the button and ring the bell. I talk about more than just Critical Role on this channel, and in fact, this week I put out a video every weekday. The last one's going up tomorrow. So if you don't want to miss out the next time I release some bonus videos, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. Now, on with the show. As a reminder, the last game opened with the party taking a long rest in Whitestone, while Gilmore invited Vax on a midnight walk up to the balcony. When they got up there, Vax discovered Gilmore was an imposter, and in fact, was actually the Rakshasa, Hotus. Vax had killed Hotus back in episode 21, but Hotus's last words were, "I will find you." And you know, looks like he nailed it. As this game opens, Matt reminds the other players that they're all asleep, and Sam corrects him. He was staying up all night reading his Tome of Leadership and Influence, something Sam did establish during the last game. Now Liam points out that Vax wouldn't have gone out walking without his boots of speed, and Matt verifies this, so I get the sense they probably discussed this in between games. Now, Matt probably could have tried to debate this. He could have said, well, there are slippers in your room, you probably could have worn those instead, and Liam would argue that Vax always wears his boots, but Matt might feel like, well, of course, that's what Liam would say. He knows we're only talking about his footwear because he's about to get into a fight. But that doesn't mean that Liam is wrong or being dishonest. After all, Vax just basically fought his sister, physically fought her, just to get his boots back. He loves his boots. By the way, if your players say, well, I wouldn't have done X without bringing Y, the only reason I didn't mention it is because I didn't realize it was going to matter, then you can debate that, or you can assume they're operating in good faith. And I don't know, this might be a hot take, but I think you need to trust your players. If they say this is what my character would have done, sure, you may sometimes need to remind them that what their character actually knows might not line up with what they know as a player, but also players should be in control of what they do as their characters, and if they can make a compelling case, then I don't always think there's a virtue in shutting them down anyway. Besides, it's not like Matt doesn't already have the upper hand in this situation. He's gonna be fine. Matt has Vax and Hotus roll initiative against each other. Vax loses and he gets stabbed and takes a bunch of poison damage in addition to the dagger damage. Then it's Vax's turn, and Liam makes sure to share Vax's mindset with the group.
Now I can do my crazy ass shit. So out of instinct, the heels click together, the boots go on, the world slows down as I speed up, and in that split second, in like a millisecond, I think he's gone to all this trouble to get me here. The door behind me could very well be locked. Also, he knows everything. He knows about Whitestone. If he leaves, he can tell the Conclave. And if I run, he's gone. So instead, and he's right in front of me, yeah? Okay, I would like to grapple him.
First of all, this is clearly all Liam has been thinking about for the past week, so he seems to have thought this through. But he does a nice job of justifying this quick assessment through the haste granted by his boots. And even without that, it's okay for your adventurer player characters to be more strategically savvy than you are as a player, and being able to think about a situation over the course of a week can help you cover that distance to be as clever as your hero should be. But that's not the important part of this scene. No, what matters here is that Liam is sharing Vax's rationale out loud. This is purely for the benefit of the audience, and I'm including Matt and his fellow players when I refer to Liam's audience. Because without this flash of insight, what do you think people would say if Vax immediately started trying to grapple Hotus or go for the knife? The other players might go, wait, why aren't you trying to run? People might fill his social media replies with jokes about Vax being reckless. So by sharing this insight in advance, he's cut through the backseat playing. He's telling them, look, don't worry, I have thought about this. Vax is making an educated guess given the situation in front of him. He might not be right, but this strategy just makes the most sense. And because of that, now the other players are in the same boat with Liam. They know what he's thought about and where his motivations lie. So now he can just play the game the way he wants to, and his friends should be on his side. Even if they may not agree with his tactics, they can't deny that at the very least, Liam has thought about them and is making the decision that makes the most sense to him. This is also beneficial for Matt, because let's imagine Matt wanted or expected Vax to run from Hotus. I don't think it's the case, but for the sake of argument, hypothetically, let's say he did. Now imagine Vax doesn't run, but he doesn't explain himself, and Matt doesn't know why Vax isn't retreating, and he's struggling to figure out how he can adjust the scene to this unexpected turn of events, which is hard to do if he doesn't know where Vax's decision is coming from. Now imagine exactly the same scenario, except Liam gives this brief monologue first. Now, Matt understands that Vax thinks he can't run because he assumes the doors are locked. And if Matt does want him to run, then it's on him to do something to correct that assumption. Maybe he can have Hotus glance back at the door and give Liam the chance to roll an insight check to see that Hotus is worried about somebody walking in on them. Maybe a guard can actually just happen to walk through the door and startle them. That would be especially contrived, but the point is, it's useful for Matt to know Vax's strategy. So yeah, I've talked about this before, but I really encourage you to just tell your fellow players what you're probably going to do, so that way they're just on the same page as you. It's better for the communication at the table for everyone. It always works. At the end of his turn, Vax calls out a message into his earring.
At the top of my lungs, I scream, not just to my earring, but loud enough for every guard and person in the castle. I scream, "Assassins! Western Tower and the courtyard! Jenga!"
You can tell from the players' faces they had all expected this from Liam, because if he didn't do this, then none of them could spring into action and help him. None of them can just say, "Oh, I happened to get a bout of insomnia tonight, I suppose I'll just go for a walk up to the tower for no reason." So I suspect the group talked about this and made sure that Liam would call out to them as soon as he reasonably got a chance to do so. Matt calls for a perception check from the sleeping party members to see how much they caught of the message and how alert they are. They all rolled decently well, 15 or higher, so Matt rules that they missed the word assassins since they were asleep when he shouted that, so they didn't catch it, but they caught West Tower and Jenga. And honestly, that is enough for the party to act on. Scanlan obviously heard the whole message because he's awake. But as it turns out, Matt has another trick up his sleeve.
As you look around you, Percy, Keyleth, and Pike.
Oh shit.
You aren't alone in your room. As climbing through the window, or in Percy's...
Ninjas!
Had come in through the hallway, you see
Ninjas.
cloaked individuals, blades drawn, up in the air, about to come down onto your asleep forms as you suddenly look up and see the figure there before you.
Motherfucking ninjas!
They look surprised to see you suddenly move. I need all of you guys to go ahead and roll initiative to add to this initiative
All three
order.
or all everybody else?
Everybody?
Everybody.
That is when the afternoon went from good to great.
Without this twist, this fight is a lot less interesting and dramatic. It's one intense round, which we just saw, between Vax and Hodis while the rest of the party is still asleep. Then, Vax wakes them up, and we'd get one or two frustrating rounds of Vax squaring off with Hodis while the rest of the party runs up to the tower and bears down on Hodis. Then it's probably like one round of the entirety of Vox Machina unloading on Hodis and annihilating him. But now, the party is dealing with a completely different problem. Vax is in danger, but at best there are a few assassins in between them and him. At worst, well, 3 party members are stuck in their rooms with assassins, and that can't be good. There are 2 combats going on at once, and now they're both way more compelling because one of them has a totally different win state. It doesn't actually matter if Vox Machina can kill all of their assassins if they can't get to Vax in time to save his life. So really, that's their priority. This strategy also makes sense because Hodis wants to win, and he wouldn't play fair. He would want to keep the other heroes occupied so he could get his personal revenge on Vax. And this is a fantastic way to make a lower level foe a legitimate threat at higher levels. He brought allies, and he made a really solid plan. Matt also clarifies later in this fight that if Vax hadn't woken up the party, the assassin's first strikes would have been auto-crits. But why wasn't there an assassin in the room of every member of Vox Machina? Well, there is an answer to that question, but we'll talk about it in a minute as we talk about some of Hodis' Rakshasa bullshit. The assassins make their strikes on the surprised but no longer unconscious foes. Matt also reminds the members of Vox Machina that none of them are wearing their armor, not even Scanlan. Keyleth gets hit twice and takes 42 damage total, and by the way, she rolled really well on her Constitution saving throws against the poison, so she only took 12 poison damage from each strike. Percy took 24 from one of his. That's another useful little lesson. Matt is rolling damage for the weapon strikes, but the poison just does 12 damage on a successful saving throw and 24 damage on a failed save, and this helps speed up the session a lot. Matt reveals a map of the hallway and places the party members in their rooms, and then he jumps back to the top of the initiative, and now everyone is involved in the fight. Scanlan casts Dimension Door and appears on the top of the tower right next to Vax and Gilmore, and Scanlan asks why Gilmore has a blade in Vax's belly. Gilmore responds by hissing at him, which is a nice way for Matt to catch Scanlan up on what Sam already knows. It's an invitation for Sam to act on his next turn with the knowledge that this probably is not Gilmore, without it being considered metagaming. Keyleth casts Thunderwave and knocks her assassin out the window. On Vax's turn, he shouts at Scanlan, and to the earring, that Gilmore is not Gilmore, he's a demon. It was very smart of him to clarify with Matt that this message was sent through the earring, because if the rest of the party can get out of their current predicament with the assassins and get to Vax's side, they're going to need to know that they should attack Hodis if he still looks like Gilmore. Of course, Vax has no idea how bad things are going for the rest of the party downstairs, so he probably assumes his friends are going to be up at his side any moment now. However, he still needs to deal with Hodis. He grabs onto him, drags him to the edge of the balcony with his enhanced speed, and drags them both over the side so they plummet to the base of the tower. Back in her bedroom, Pike casts Guiding Bolt on the assassin. Matt asks her to clarify the spell level going forward, but he's not doing this just to scold his players. After all, he knows they're flustered by the assassin-shaped curveball he threw at them. But the reason he highlights this at this point in the scene is because it's actually going to be really important later in this fight for him to know exactly what level spells are being cast. Also, when she casts Guiding Bolt on her assassin, Matt describes how Grog can see the glow from beneath her door. What a fantastic clue to give your players so they know what they can interact with. Seriously, this fight is just a spectacular showing from Matt across the board. He's giving the players information so they can make interesting decisions. It's great. Pike grabs some weapons, and Matt says it's reasonable for her to throw on her gauntlets as well. She doesn't have any armor, so since it doesn't really matter what she's wearing, Ashley says that Pike sleeps in the nude. Because why not, right? It's not going to impact her armor class in any way, so she might as well be a little goofy about it. Because sometimes we do get to see the Chaos Goblin inside Ashley creep through into Pike, but it's just a shame it's so uncommon with this character. I think this version of Pike would be really interesting if we got to see the chaotic side a little bit more often. Pike took a nasty hit in her room and took 24 points of poison damage. Then she tried to run and got hit again and took another 24 points of poison damage. After all the hits she's taken, she's down to 1 hit point. I know there are a ton of game masters in the community who basically think there's no way to pose a genuine threat to PCs in 5th edition, especially at higher levels. They insist, no, 5e characters are too powerful, you can't really challenge them, it can't be done.
Do not tell me it can't be done.
Percy runs past Pike's room and briefly stops to murder her assassin. At this point, most of the cast is together in one place for a fight, so I'm just going to cover the relevant highlights. Back in the courtyard, Vax and Hodis are in a crumpled pile on the ground. Hodis' illusion has faded thanks to the damage he took, so now he's just a tiger man with backwards hands. He stabs Vax 2 more times, knocking him unconscious. The tower is more than 70 feet tall, and most of Scanlan's spells have a range of 60 feet, so he can't help Vax from the top of the tower. So he calls out in his earring that he's going down, something I'm sure the members of Vox Machina are relieved to hear him say outside of a brothel, and then he dives over the edge of the balcony with his sword out, pointed down. Matt rolls to see if Hodis notices Scanlan, but rolls low on his end. Scanlan does a bunch of damage to Hodis, plus Hodis takes bonus damage equal to half of Scanlan's falling damage. Then Scanlan casts Healing Word and brings Vax back up from unconsciousness. What a turn. Meanwhile, the rest of the party kills the other assassin, but now they have to deal with the problem they originally expected to have. They need to figure out how they can get to Vax as quickly as possible. Keyleth uses Stone Shape to make a hole in the wall so the party can just cut right from the hallway out onto the roof. Vex flies out on her broom and shoots at Hodis, but she's still rolling her attacks at disadvantage because Percy has yet to finish building the bicycle seat for her broom. She rolls a 1 on one of her attacks, so Matt has her make an acrobatics check to see if she can stay on top of the broom, which she does. I think that's a little bit harsh, but in fairness, they do have a solution to this problem. They just haven't had a chance to finish it in downtime yet. This just kind of helps escalate the priority of getting the seat built and completed for the broom. Vex does get some hits on Hodis, but Matt asks her alignment and she confirms she's chaotic neutral, though she's not wild about that, and Matt knows that. She also casts Hunter's Mark on Hodis, but it has no effect. Matt is really trying to remember the traits that make the Rakshasa so challenging to fight. Hodis tries to run and Scanlan casts Bigby's hand to grasp him, but even that spell moves through Hodis with no effect. Liam just nods along and says he knows what's going on, because not only has he fought one of these before, but he also runs games for his kids, so he might have read about Rakshasas in the monster manual. But he specifically doesn't say anything about what's going on. Now, by basically saying, yeah, I know what's happening, he is telling his fellow players, no, don't worry, Matt didn't make a mistake and he's not trying to pull a fast one on you to screw you over. This is some Rakshasa bullshit. But that's all he's doing. He's not giving them any hints and he's not metagaming. In fact, in character on his turn, he suggests that he should use blades instead of spells, because Vax wouldn't know exactly why certain spells weren't doing anything and why certain physical attacks seem to do a whole lot. Because what's actually the case is that the Rakshasa is functionally immune to spells of 6th level or lower. However, he's vulnerable to piercing damage from magic weapons wielded by good creatures. How specific. And now's the part where I finally explain why only certain party members were targeted by assassins. Because Keyleth, Pike, and Percy were the only sleeping party members who are good aligned. Scanlan and Vax are also good, but they were conscious and obviously Vax was the target of this attack. Basically, those are the party members Hodis was actually worried about, so Hodis tried to tie them up in combat with other assassins so he could get his revenge on Vax. Grog lands a solid hit on Hodis, and Hodis says, "I'll be back for all of you." I've talked before about how good Matt Mercer is at giving exposition during his fights, and this is another fantastic example. First of all, it sounds like the Rakshasa plans to retreat and come back another day, which means he's apparently either injured enough or out-leveled enough that he's decided it's not worth it to stick around. But also, if he doesn't run, then that also tells the player something. It tells them that he's not worried about not being able to come back from the dead, which I guess is not surprising because he's already done it at least once. So clearly, he thinks he could do it again. It also establishes that either way, he feels he's either seriously injured or seriously outmatched. This message also tells the party that the next time he shows up, he's going to be even more prepared for them, and even more vicious and vengeful than he was this time. After all, this time it was only personal toward Vax, but now he's threatening the other team members as well. Pike casts a 7th level Flame Strike, which does enough damage to finish off Hodis and burn him to ash. The party starts to debrief a little bit, but Percy is quick to point out that they need to figure out if there are any other assassins in town. However, when Vax tries to take off the robe he got from Hodis, it turns out he can't. When he tries, it feels like the air is coming out of his lungs. The other party members try to pull it off, and it feels like they're ripping off his skin. Percy takes Vax down to the anti-magic zone outside the spinning orb of death, and then they're able to remove the robe. Very easy. They give Vax another robe, but he just stays naked instead. Well, naked with boots on, I guess. Keyleth goes to check on the real Gilmore and finds that he was also being attacked by an assassin, but he's at the end of his fight and he uses a custom telekinesis-style spell to crush the assassin in midair. It's very badass. Keyleth briefly tells him about the attack, and Gilmore teleports them to Vax's side, where he is delighted to discover Vax's current state of dress. They check on the other spellcasters in town. Zara's fine, but then Matt remembers that Kashaw was with them when they first killed Hodis, so they find the remains of an assassin splattered on Kashaw's walls, but he's okay. Allura and Kima are fine, although Lady Kima killed another assassin. Allura knows all about Rakshasas, and when she learns that that's what they're dealing with, she informs them that it takes a few weeks or months for the Rakshasa's body to reform in the Nine Hells. But if they want to solve this problem forever, they've got to go to the Nine Hells and kill Hodis there. Otherwise he'll keep coming back and probably keep adding more names to his list of targets, because now he's going to be gunning for both Vax and Pike. This is honestly one of my favorite subplots in Critical Role, because it has absolutely nothing to do with anything else. Very minor spoilers here, but the Rakshasa was not here on the orders of the Chroma Conclave, or the Cult of the Whispered One, or the Mind Flayers beneath Craghammer. This is just some asshole who keeps coming back at the most inconvenient times. And even if he never does come back again before the party has a chance to go and deal with him, which I'm not going to spoil right now whether he does or doesn't, but either way, he's still something they can't ignore, and that's great. Pike casts Speak with Dead and interrogates the corpse of Kima's assassin, and they learn that these are members of the clasp from the Stillben sect, which is where Vox Machina first met up. They also learn that there's one more assassin unaccounted for, the one Keyleth pushed out the window, so they send Galdrick the Wolf to go hunt him down. Gilmore identifies the robe as a robe of flaying. Then Vax asks him to identify his armor, since Gilmore was not the one who first did the identification when they got this vestige. Gilmore scans it, and then he doesn't say anything, he just asks Vax to follow him to the edge of the cliff next to the castle. He asks Vax to trust him, and Vax says he does, so Gilmore pushes Vax off the cliff, and at that moment, a pair of wings burst forth from Vax's back. The armor has given him another gift. He can fly once a day, for I think 10 minutes. Vex is very jealous, considering all the work she's gone through to try to find a way to fly. Percy seizes this moment to give Vax a gift he's been making for him, a raven's head clasp for his cloak, which is filled with scents that smell like the Raven Queen's temple. Then he adds, "Now talk to Keyleth." However, during the night, Vax is rocked by nightmares about the Rakshasa attack. He doesn't get the benefits of a long rest, and he can't spend any hit dice in the morning. When Vex goes to apologize to him in the morning for being a brat about the flight thing, she finds a very sick Vax. They wind up roleplaying it as diarrhea and nausea, which makes for some charming sound effects as Liam roleplays his character. But this is actually another effect of the Rakshasa. Their claws inflict a curse that makes the target unable to take short or long rests. And since Vax can't take a short rest, he can't spend any hit dice either. Pike and Keyleth are able to cast Greater Restoration, and this cures Vax of his curse. I do wish this issue wasn't able to be resolved quite so easily, but you know, this party's pretty high level, so you are going to have this issue sometimes. Galdrick returns with the dead assassin, and they check his body and find some poison and a scrying eye, a magic item they can use to scry on other people. The fact that these assassins could scry on Whitestone just reaffirms that Allura and Gilmore's ultimate goal has to be to cloak the city. And they ask Pike to stay with them and help cast the spells to protect this city. Because it's getting to be that time of year, she's going to have to go back to New York and resume filming Blind Spot. They give Pike a gatestone so she can get back to them immediately whenever she happens to get some time off from filming. I don't know why they don't just stick with the astral projection method that they've clearly already established. It's so weird. They decide to take one more night in Whitestone, ostensibly so Vax can rest up, but I think it's just to make sure they have as much time as possible to roleplay with Pike before they have to write out her character for who knows how long. Keyleth asks Pike about her relationship with Sarenrae, since it does seem like Pike has full autonomy to do whatever she wants with her life. Both Pike and Keyleth express some concern about how involved the Raven Queen is in Vax's life, because it sort of seems like he doesn't have that same level of autonomy that Pike does. Keyleth clarifies that she was raised to believe that basically the gods do their own thing and the druids do their own thing, and they can kind of just leave each other alone. But she knows she has to make her peace with the fact they are going to be interacting with the gods a lot more. Pike also tells Keyleth to just embrace the idea of a relationship with Vax. She knows Keyleth is very worried about what will happen if the relationship doesn't work out, but not everything has to last forever. Keyleth and Vax could just have some fun and see what happens. Scanlan talks to Pike and officially withdraws his proposal. And his explanation shows a level of maturity we don't often see from Scanlan.
But I don't want to love an idea. I want to love a girl. So, and I think in all of this time pining after you, I forgot to just hang out with you and know you as a person. And I'm sorry for that. But.
It's okay, Scanlan.
So I'm sorry for objectifying you or whatever.
These things happen, and I
We'll
guess...
be friends.
We'll be friends.
We'll be friends. Listen, I will always love you, but I don't want this to be a barrier in our friendship anymore.
Okay.
So I'm taking it off the table. And besides, all I really want is to matter to someone, and I do now, and that's very new for me, and confusing and exhilarating, and I've got to figure out how to do it, and well, I'll work on that, and you work on whatever you're working on, and I will say this before we leave. I'm a little older than you, so I can give you some advice.
Okay.
I will say, speaking as someone who has lost out on years of a relationship with someone I care deeply about, if you have someone out there that you love, you should tell that person, or at least tell someone about it. It's a weight that you're going to continue to bear, and you're going to miss out on months and years of either knowing or not knowing. So you don't have to tell me, but you're the bravest woman I know. You should be brave enough to just admit your feelings. Anyway, I just wanted to say
But you
goodbye.
are very charming. I just wanted to tell you that.
It's not happening, sorry.
Okay.
Look, obviously a lot of Scanlan's advances towards Pike didn't age well, to say the very least. And while it doesn't seem like Ashley had an issue with this behavior, that's not necessarily the point. If we're going to engage with Scanlan as a serious character, it means we have to reconcile with the fact that his attitude toward Pike is less than ideal. And while I do wish that it just hadn't been as creepy for most of the run so far, I am glad that the behavior is at least being addressed and condemned within the text of the show. Percy finally builds the seat for the broom. Scanlan gives Vex the hat he commissioned, the witch's hat, and his favor that he asked of Vex as penance for stealing the broom. She has to wear this hat whenever she flies. They go drinking with Pike, Vax says that she inspires him, Percy gives her a list of things to do around town, and she actually gives Percy an amulet she got from under her bed when they were back in Westron, and she asks him to always wear it. The party starts a food fight, they take a long rest, they say goodbye to Pike and the NPCs, and then Keyleth casts Plane Shift and takes the party to the Feywild. However, because they got all that information about the Feywild last week and a whole bunch has happened since then, they don't remember that they were told specifically where they could go in the Feywild to be as close as possible to their destination. They forgot about the Shademirk Bog and the Gilded Run, the only few landmarks that they knew about that were apparently close to the Bow's location. So instead, Keyleth brings them to the pool of water where Grog met the nymph, and they maybe kissed? The party doesn't know and Grog refuses to say. Matt describes the visuals around them and the pool of water in front of them, and then he calls the game there. Obviously, if Pike isn't coming with them, then it doesn't really make any sense to keep playing with her at the table when she can't participate in this part of the adventure. Also, this does make a really good stopping point because the Feywild can and will act as a new chapter of the story. But also, I don't think they went where Matt expected them to go in the Feywild, so he might have to go and do some prep before the next game. Thankfully, Matt has 2 weeks to prep the next game since he and Marisha were headed to a convention, which is when the rest of the cast played themselves in Liam's one-shot, which we already talked about in this video. But funnily enough, we will also be back in 2 weeks to discuss the next episode of the Vox Machina campaign, episode 59, The Feywild. This kicks off the new story arc as the party seeks the bow in the heart of the cancerous tree. But in order to get to the tree, first they just have to get through the Feywild in the first place, and that's easier said than done. But Matt really has some fun running the Feywild, so I think we're going to have a ton of lessons we can learn from this episode. In the meantime, make sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss a single video. I normally upload new videos every Monday and Thursday, although I am taking next Monday off because, you know, including tomorrow's video, I just made 6 videos in 7 days, and I am pooped. If you want to support me as I make these videos, consider joining my Patreon or my YouTube memberships, or making a one-time donation through Ko-fi. If that's not in the cards for you right now, or you just don't wanna, that's totally fine. I would still love to have you join my Discord server. And make sure to sign up for my newsletter, and all those links are in the doobly-doo below. I made a video last week about what it could be like to play an agnostic or atheist or an anti-theist in D&D. That video came out so well, I would love to have you check it out if you haven't already. Go watch it right here. Until next time, play fair, and have fun.